Hello, everybody. Today we will see the current state of the OpenID plugin, which PKP decided to actively support. We will start with an overview of OpenID. OpenID is an open standard and decentralized authentication protocol that enables users to log in to multiple unrelated websites without needing separate identities and passwords for it. The key concepts of OpenID are the relying party, which is the application or website where the user is trying to log in. It trusts the identity provider to verify the user's identity. The identity provider, which is a service that manages user authentication, it provides user identity tokens to the relying party. The OpenID Connect, which is an identity layer built on top of 2.0. It uses JSON web tokens to securely transfer identity data. And the claims, which are pieces of user data issued by the identity provider. The OpenID authentication workflow. The OpenID workflow involves the interaction between the user, the relying party, and the identity provider. The user attempts to log in, clicking on the login with OpenID provider or something button in the application. Then the relying party redirects to identity provider. The application redirects the user to the OpenID provider for authentication. Then the identity provider presents a login form for the user, and the user enters his credentials and completes the authentication. An identity token is issued from the identity provider, and it's returned to the relying party. Then the relying party verifies the JOT and by checking its signature and claims. The relying party extracts the user information from the token to grant access, and the user is successfully logged in if all the process goes well. OpenID provides some endpoints for several cases. A discovery endpoint that provides metadata about the OpenID Connect configuration. The applications can fetch this endpoint to automatically discover available endpoints. The authorization endpoint. The authorization endpoint is used to authenticate the user and obtain an authorization code or token. The token endpoint, which exchanges the authorization code for an access token. The user info endpoint, which provides user profile information, which is claims to the application, and the end session endpoint, which logouts the user if needed. This is an example of a decoded JOT with claims of the authenticated user. The plugin manages those specific claims. So let's see now some information about the existing plugin. The repository is PKP OpenID. We have published 2 releases for the plugin that covers 3.4.0-X and 3.3.0-X OJS, OMP, and OPS versions. We are in the process of developing some new features and fixing minor bugs. We will have new releases for those changes before the end of the year, I suppose. Let's take a look at the plugin itself. to enable the plugin, we are following the following steps. It's like every other plugin. We can go to the application and see it working. So this is the login page without the plugin enabled. I log in as an administrator. I will go and enable the plugin.
And Dimitris, sorry to jump in. You gave the GitHub link for the repository, but this plugin is also available in the plugin gallery for installation from within OJS, correct?
Yes, it is. We have those two releases that I previously mentioned are available for downloading in the from the plugin gallery. So I have it enabled. Seems, anyways. So if you enable it and you can, there are it's a choice of providers. You can use a custom OpenID provider, ORCID provider, Google, Microsoft, and Apple ID. I will demonstrate the OpenID provider, the custom OpenID provider, and use a keycloak local server. I have already.
Again, sorry to jump in, Dimitris. Are you going to demonstrate ORCID later, or should I just mention it now?
Oh, I can enable that also.
Okay. Just to make the point that Dimitris is about to explore Keycloak, which is probably not what most journals are going to do, but it does give you a lot of flexibility to, if you want to authenticate against your own user set. For most journals, they'll want to use ORCID OpenID Connect, which doesn't require anything near as complicated as what he's about to demonstrate.
Yeah, I would add that later, but I can add them both and just use them, Okay. So now we can see, I will log out so we can see the changes in the login page, fortunately. Yeah, so here you have the two ID providers that we enabled, the Keycloak server and the ORCID provider. I will continue with the so the plugin settings. There are some settings in the plugin. There are some features and some providers that can be enabled. I will talk about the settings later in this presentation. I used the custom provider setting, so I use the Keycloak server that I have locally, and yeah, here is the screenshot that I just showed. So to log in with the provider, I will just show that the application. Let's say that I want to log in with a user. This is the Keycloak's login page. So I will just use user that I have. Okay, this user is not previously added in the or in the journal. So the journal asks if I want to, if this user has already an account or not. If the user has an account, then he needs to add the username and password of this existing account so that the existing account can be linked with the provider. And if there is no existing account, then the user can say that I'm not here as an account, and he can fill in this form and provide the necessary data for registering in the journal. Those data are automatically retrieved by the provider. So these are the claims that have returned from the keycloak provider. So I will go with this. Okay, and now the user is successfully logged in. If you try to log out, then you will be redirected in the keycloak logout page. And if you want to log out, you will log out, and you will be redirected back to the to OJS. So this part of the presentation is exactly that. Okay, and there are some the features that are currently developed in the plugin are those. You can enable a legacy login. If you enable this, the administrator can enable the legacy login option in order for the login with the username and password to be available. If you disable that, then you can only log in by configured provider. You can enable legacy registration by default. The previous one by default is enabled. You can enable legacy registration. By enabling that, the users can be able to register without using a provider to log in. This feature disables the option to connect with an existing user. So if the account connection is disabled, upon successful connection with the provider, the user is always asked to provide the OJS account data for registration. It does not provide the option to, pick from an existing user. The user data synchronization feature, this option, if enabled, allows the system to retrieve the first name, last name, and email from the provider and sync the user account with those automatically whenever this is possible. For example, for the email, it's not always possible to to take the email from the provider because it may conflict with another user, let's say. Okay, and the automatic API key generation with this feature, if enabled, when a user is registered through a provider, an API key is automatically created. Finally, this plugin can be enabled site-wide. By doing so, every journal will use the common site providers and options to log in. Right now, there is no way to mix individual journal settings and site-wide settings. For example, we cannot exclude specific journals from using the site-wide settings. There is a new feature under development that complements this one by allowing the site manager to provide only one redirect URI for all the journals that are hosted in the site, and independently from which specific journal you're trying to log in or log out, the provider will use this one common URI that is provided by the admin. That's it, more or less. I'm not sure if you want for me to demonstrate anything else on the application. I can demonstrate. I already have linked the ORCID my ORCID account, my ORCID test account to the administrator account of the journal. So if I try to sign in with the ORCID, I'm redirected to the ORCID login. If I sign in here, it's my account. And because it's already linked with the administrator account, it will be logged in as an administrator. Yeah, that's it, more or less. Do you have any questions or any requests to see something else?
I'll steal the microphone for a second. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Dimitris. This is a really good tour of the technical capabilities of the plugin. I wanted to just give a moment of history on this plugin because it is a bit of an unusual history. The work on this plugin came to us from Leibniz Psychology. They coded an original version of the plugin for OJS 3.2, I think. A developer named Ronnie Bolter there did that work. He eventually moved on, and the Leibniz University, Leibniz Psychology was no longer able to continue the maintenance of the plugin to update it to 3.3, for example. So Dimitris took the work that they had already started and then took that over into a PKP GitHub repository with their blessing, and then did the work of modernizing it to work with 3.3, 3.4, and of course 3.5, which is coming out soon. So credit to Leibniz Psychology and Ronnie for that original work on the plugin. The work that was done to modernize it and add some new features was funded by, I believe, the Oxford Bodleian Library. Is that correct, Michael?
Yep.
Perfect, yeah. So credit to them for supporting that work. And this is all done in kind of the open source ideal world where the software is released open. Maintenance can shift from organization to organization as their ability to do that work changes. And yeah, credit to Oxford for supporting us and being able to patriate that plugin to a PKP GitHub repository and continue with it. Do you want to ask a question? And I don't know much about OpenID, so I might be it might be an easy question, I'm not sure. But the OJS database has a central list of users, and those are drawn upon by the different journals in OJS. And I'm wondering, since the plugin can be used either site-wide or on a per-journal basis, what does it look like when some journals do use it and other ones don't? I suppose that the synchronization feature, for example, would allow for one journal's kind of login policies to affect users in other journals.
Yes, I think that's the case. If you enable it, yes.
Okay, makes sense to me. So I think the recommendation might be that this is best deployed in a site-wide environment where all journals kind of have the same configuration, but it is possible to deploy it elsewise. It just might mean that, you know, a sync feature in one journal means that the user account changes according to their configuration policies.
The sync feature is maybe it would need some work if you enable it. Also, the API feature, you know, there are cases that some data are overridden, like the API key, which is pending fix for the next release. But yeah, the name and the surname, the first name and the family name will be overridden if they are used in a journal specific configuration site-wide.
That makes sense, yeah. So my recommendation would be that folks are best advised to deploy this with a site-wide configuration, but that they can, if they like, deploy it per journal. It's just that it's a bit more complicated. Those kinds of policies are very hard for us to set in a kind of general case and have them work for everybody. Good. I had another question, but it's kind of fled me. I'll pause for somebody else.
To stress out that if there is a journal that has enabled it, and then the site administrator enables it also, then every setting that the journal has added is overridden by it's not lost technically, but it's overridden in its business logic by the site wide properties and settings.
Just leaving
Ale?
space for somebody else, but I'll go again. So I wanted to talk for a moment about the common use cases for this plugin. So I mentioned earlier that, and Dimitris covered this as well, the most common use case for this plugin is to use it to support login with ORCID. But Dimitris did also show the Keycloak server. And if you want to run your own authentication service, Keycloak's a great way to do that. We've spoken with a few folks who have experience with Keycloak. Essentially, it's an open source application that supports OpenID service provision. So here's what it looks like. And Dimitris also kind of showed you had a few user accounts created there. One of the use cases for using a service like Keycloak is if you had, let's say, an OJS, OMP, and OPS installation, and you wanted to link those together into having a common user database. So you'd be able to set up your common pool of users, configure OJS, OMP, and OPS all to use Keycloak as a login mechanism, as an exclusive login mechanism. And that would allow for you to have a common database of users across the three applications.
Also, just to mention that there are capabilities in Keycloak to define roles and user groups and things like that, which can also somehow be of value to some users, but they are not yet implemented somehow in the plugin. So the only things that you take from the provider, whichever that might be, are the email, the first name, and the family name, and not other things that may be useful but are not right now handled in the plugin.
Perfect. I wanted to give a direction to the forum. So this is relatively early days of us having these plugins for OpenID support in OJS 3.3, 3.4. Actually, and one of the things we added with this release, thanks to Dimitris' work, is support for OMP and OPS. So all three applications in 3.3 and 3.4 now support OpenID through this plugin in the plugin gallery. But it is fairly early days in us releasing and supporting these. So if you're using them and you find that there's features you'd like to see or you have questions about the capabilities of that plugin, please join us in the PKP support forum and create a post there. We can kind of start a discussion there around use cases and features and that sort of thing as well.
There are already some open issues in the PKP OpenID repository, and which are 2 or 3 of them are currently under development, and 2 of them are under user testing from the user that actually filed the issue. So yeah, you can also find information there and maybe some issue that covers your case.
Thanks, Dimitris. This looks great. And again, credit to Ronnie and Leibniz Psychology for their support of this in the past, and to Oxford Bodleian for their help in getting this modernized and released for current releases of OJS.
Michael, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to also say that this looks like a large amount of work, Dimitri, and a really nice addition. I didn't realize that we would also have support for OMP and OPS, and I assume 4.3.5 when that's released in the new year as well.
All the changes that are being developed are ported in the main branch also. So yeah,
Ready to go.
We've talked a little bit about the future plans for this plugin. So 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5, it will certainly be a plugin. We're making steps towards adopting the session management and increasingly the user management tools that come with the Laravel ecosystem, which are gradually replacing our homebrew stuff that we've had in OJS, OMP, and OPS for the last 20 years. So as we're able to adopt more and more of those third-party tool sets, we can use the ecosystem support around those for things like OpenID, basically. So at some point, we'll replace the custom implementation of OpenID as a protocol with the tool set from Laravel, and that'll decrease our code holdings, which makes it easier for us to maintain everything that we do, and also kind of open up some of the feature set for some of the third-party stuff there as well. So for the moment, it is currently a plugin, and that's what we've got currently scheduled and prioritized. But at some point, we can replace it with third-party support and declare this to be no longer a thing that we have to separately maintain as our own project. Perfect. I'll stop the recording now. So thanks to Dimitris for putting this on and everyone for attending. And I will see this posted to the YouTube channel. So you can expect to see some exchange there on comments as well. So anybody who's watching this after the fact, please do engage with us on the YouTube channel or on the support forum. And thanks again, Dimitris, for putting the presentation on.
thank you.